When you think of letters from the Bible, what comes to mind? Maybe dusty old scrolls and some really dense theology, right? Well, the letter of First Thessalonians, that's a whole different story. It wasn't written in a moment of quiet reflection. No, this was born right in the middle of an intense human drama, a story all about separation, anxiety, and in the end, incredible relief.
To really get this story, you have to picture the church in Thessalonica as a community that was born prematurely. It's brand new, it's incredibly fragile, really vulnerable. And just as it's taking its first breaths, its founder, the Apostle Paul, is suddenly ripped away. The stakes just could not be higher.
So to understand why Paul felt this desperate need to write this letter, we actually have to go back. We need to look at the very beginning, the chaotic and incredibly short time he spent founding this community.
Just look at this timeline. It shows you how precarious this whole situation was. We are not talking about years or even months of careful teaching here. Paul was in Thessalonica for maybe, 3 to 6 weeks total. I mean, think about that. In less than 2 months, he arrives, his message starts to connect with people, and then almost immediately this intense hostility just erupts, and he's forced to flee for his life. He had to leave this brand new community behind when they were barely on their feet.
And his situation only got worse. He didn't just go to the next town over to lay low. He was pushed from Thessalonica to Berea, then forced south to Athens, and finally all the way to Corinth. With every single step, he was getting further and further away from the new believers he was so incredibly worried about.
And this brings us to his urgent mission. Here he is, hundreds of kilometers away in Corinth. The persecution back in Thessalonica is intense, and it's just way too dangerous for him to return. He's completely cut off, so he has to find another way to reach them.
This is the question that must have been eating him alive, right? I mean, keeping him up at night. Had their new faith just collapsed under all that pressure? Was all his work completely for nothing? How could he possibly find out?
He does the only thing he can. He sends his close friend and partner, Timothy, on a really dangerous mission. Timothy had to travel all the way back into that hostile city, check on this fragile community, and bring back a report. And this right here, this is the emotional climax of the whole story. On one hand, you've got Paul's absolute worst fears, that they'd abandon their faith, cave to the persecution, and then it was all just a waste. But the report Timothy brings back is the exact opposite. I mean, it's just unbelievable news. Not only is their faith strong, they are standing firm, they are filled with love, and they miss Paul just as much as he misses them. You can just imagine the profound relief he must have felt in that moment. Overwhelmed with joy and relief, Paul immediately sits down with Timothy and Silas to dictate a letter, and that letter is what we now know as 1 Thessalonians. It is so crucial to understand this isn't some abstract theological essay, it's a direct, heartfelt, and urgent message of encouragement that was born from this very moment of relief. And you can totally see his state of mind reflected right in the structure of the letter itself. He opens in chapter 1 with just pure praise for their faith. In chapter 2, he defends his ministry and reminds them of this deep, almost parental love. Chapter 3 is all about his joy at Timothy's good report. It's only then, in chapters 4 and 5, that he offers teaching on holiness and hope to strengthen them for what's ahead. The entire letter just flows from that initial report. So, if you boil it all down, the core message of the letter gives these new believers a simple but really powerful framework, grounding their new identity in their past, their present, and their future.
Paul gives them this simple three-part anchor for their identity. He reminds them of their past. They turned away from lifeless idols. He defines their present. They are now serving the living and true God. And he gives them their future, a firm hope to wait for his Son to return from heaven. The simple framework to find their entire new reality.
So why does this deeply personal, ancient letter still resonate so much today? Why do we see it as such a powerful model for faith? Well, let's start with this number, 300. That's roughly the distance in kilometers that this letter had to travel from Corinth to Thessalonica. This wasn't an instant message. This was a physical dispatch, carried over a journey that would have taken weeks, all just to deliver a message of encouragement and hope. The effort alone speaks volumes. And that message became a timeless model for a few key reasons. First, it proved that a strong community can actually thrive under pressure, even when its leader is forced to step away. Second, it showed that encouragement isn't just a morale boost, it's a strategic tool for reinforcing a group's identity and resilience. And finally, It demonstrates the psychological power of having a shared vision for the future, which gives meaning to present struggles and the strength to persevere.
This leaves us with a final thought. In an age of instant communication, Paul's story really challenges us. It makes you wonder what message of encouragement, of hope, of love is so important to you that it would be worth sending on a 300-kilometer journey today.